All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us as we continue on with our TED Talks for today. We have Kashmir Kali, and she's going to be talking with us about the COVID-19 and what health programs need from you during this time. Kashmir?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. Okay, so let me see if I can share my screen here the way that I want to share it. Give me 1 second. Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out how I can just present with my notes so that I can see the notes. Does anyone know how to do that? I don't usually write notes on my slides, so I don't have a good idea. Olivia, do you know?
I do not. Usually when I'm in presentation mode, it doesn't show me the notes. I don't know, Paul, if you know for sure.
I'm not sure either, but if you just want to do it this way, I mean, if you're fine with that.
No, because I don't want you all to see the notes.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay, hold on 1 second. I think. Does anyone else on the call know how to do this? The students? I feel so old, like not knowing how to use PowerPoint.
What's the question?
Did you try clicking in the lower right corner where it's the presentation mode?
This one?
Yep.
Yeah, so this shows you all the slides, but I want to be able to see my notes
There,
as well.
we've
There's
got
like
it
a
now.
presenter view
Oh,
that seems
I see.
to
Yeah.
be turned off.
Click.
So, Kashmir, if you have the most up-to-date ones, you can send to either Olivia and I, and we can just do the slides, and then you can see.
Oh yeah, maybe let's just do it that way. Yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
Kashmir, there is something you can click, use presenter view. Then it should show you. You see yeah. And
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And now try.
that should work.
I did do that, but it doesn't
And then do
work.
check from. There you go.
That
You have
also
two
doesn't work.
monitors?
Ugh.
Or do you have only one?
I do just have one. That might be why it's not letting me do it.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just here, I'll stop sharing for a moment. You can
I
stop
have you there.
recording for a
I have
moment.
the presentation.
Appreciate it. So let me start here at the beginning. Good morning, and thank you for joining this little TED Talk of mine. Thanks, Paul and Olivia, for inviting me to do so. My name is Kashmir Kali. I currently am an epidemiologist and senior advisor at CDC. I work for our PEPFAR program in Washington. I'm based in Bogota, Colombia, because my partner is a Foreign Service officer, and this is our first State Department tour. But I work for our Washington office at PEPFAR, and I support our interagency data team. I'm the deputy director of that team. I'll talk a little bit about my work as we go through this call, through this TED Talk, but the other really important piece of my recent work that I wanted to highlight was that I've been part of the White House's COVID-19 response task force on and off over the last several months. I'm probably rolling back on in the next couple of months. I served in my time there as our analytics deputy. I don't do data analytics, but I did support the coordination of, you can imagine, all of the various data sources that we have. So our team is the team, for example, that puts out the COVID data tracker, the public facing data that you see online, as well as all of the data for the White House's consumption and policy decision making. So I also served as the White House interagency lead between our team and the White House's task force. And then in my previous pre-Hopkins life, I was also an operations management consultant at a large healthcare consulting firm for a few years. And then, yeah, I graduated from the MPH MBA program from Hopkins in 2016. And I don't know if we have any dual degree programmers, but shout out, it's a great program. And I love tacos and rock climbing and languages. So living in Bogota, I get to do 2 of those things really often. I climb a lot, and obviously it's here though. So someone needs to open a good taco place in Bogota. But thank you again for attending this TED Talk, which I think you will see over the next 10 to 15 minutes is more a plea talk, because I'll be asking 2 very specific things of you all as you go into the world of public health after you graduate. And the title of this talk is Blood, Sweat, and Tears and Organizational Science, What Public Health Programs Need from You in the COVID-19 world and really beyond. And when Paul had asked me to speak for this event, I had a bunch of ideas sort of floating around in my head that we talked through as well. And I wrote some of them down, and I realized that largely they fell into 2 big categories, right? 2 big buckets. One was this idea of passion and using inspiration in public health as a driving factor. And another was around systems and systems thinking and business methodologies in the context of the public health world. And so to me, if you excel at both of those things, if you're highly passionate and you're really smart in the way that your public health system is developed and organized, then I think you've removed a ton of the space for failure within public health. And so today I'll be trying to convince you of bringing both of these things into your world, into your work, whether you're working now or in your future work as a public health professional. But I wanted to start off by talking about this. This is public health. I don't think any of you probably remember this, but this was a campaign by ASPPH, which is the Associations of Schools and Programs of Public Health, to raise awareness about education and careers in public health. And they used like student ambassadors and fairs and like career fairs to literally pass out stickers that looked like this. It was a little square sticker, and it said, "This is public health." And the goal was that you would literally put the sticker on a place where you would see a public health intervention happening. So I remember tagging kind of all sorts of things like the water fountain or a no smoking sign, or the section, I don't know if the section of the Daily Grind still exists, but the area where they had like all the fruits, the apples and the bananas. And I even put one on my friend's forehead that I worked with. But the idea was that you use these stickers to literally tag places where we were exemplifying examples of public health so that your community learned what the hell public health was. Because until very recently, most people didn't understand how ubiquitous public health interventions really are and how critical it is to a high quality of life. But I also remember thinking when we were doing this, it was just like a few days that we were doing this, and we had a lot of fun with it because it made you realize how public health really is everywhere. But I also remember thinking that we have a lot of work to do if we literally have to tag places and things that have required public health interventions to educate our communities about our field. And I wasn't exactly like sad about that, but I do remember thinking that, wow, this is why public health advocacy is so important in our world, because how will we ever climb the mountain without those advocates? And it is kind of sad in some ways that the advocacy efforts had to be like this grassroots, that we had to physically tag things, identifying them as public health. Obviously, fast forward to a few years later, and in some ways, my question was answered and my wish strangely came true. And now everyone knows what public health is, and everyone has an opinion about this pandemic and how the system works and how it doesn't work. Everyone's become what I call an armchair epidemiologist, right? We as a science have now been sort of propelled into the public eye. And one undeniably good thing about that, as horrendous as the pandemic has been, is that people are beginning to recognize the importance of work and having an opinion on it, right? So like we have politicians that are making decisions about our public health systems and our health systems at large, and those decisions make you feel a certain way. Then we have like actual scientists that are advocating and advising these decision makers what to do. And that, by the way, that second photo there is my previous boss, the PEPFAR coordinator, Debbie Burks. I had to put her in there. And then we have the media, which has so much power in dictating the discourse and so much power over really like our emotions and how we feel. And I know I am exhausted by reading about the pandemic. Then you have like your actual health team, your doctors and your nurses, if something happens to you, that give you real medical advice, which also seems to be changing very fast. And then to me, the scariest of all is like you have your mom and your grandparents and your random family members telling you what to do. That's my actual mom. That's my daughter. They're in the middle. These are not my actual grandparents, but they were so cute. I put them up here. And everyone knows exactly what's going on and tells you exactly what to do. And there's so much noise and it is causing a lot of confusion. So imagine if you're a person that is actually studying public health and you're confused and you're exhausted and you're daunted by everything that's happening. There's like basically no hope for the lay people, right? And like I said, as catastrophic as the last 2 years have been, it would be naive of us not to recognize some of those unexpected positive externalities of the pandemic. So yes, we've had a right. So as I was saying, I think for the first time we've become visible, right? In a long time, I should say, not the first time really, but in modern history, as far as I can remember. And I remember like soon after the pandemic started, a friend of mine had said something like, Kashmira, isn't this so cool? Like, I mean, we didn't really know the extent of the pandemic at the time, but he said like, you work in public health. This must be the most exciting time of your life, a pandemic. And my immediate reaction was like, no, it's not exciting. People are going to die and they are dying. But then I thought about his comment and I realized that in many ways, it was the first time that I felt seen as a public health professional outside of my public health world. But of course, with more visibility, our world has also become more evident to how, or the world rather, has become more evident to how broken our systems are, right? So we're seeing our structures literally fall apart as we navigate the burden of this pandemic, not only on public health systems really, right? But also on our supply chains, our food chains, our information systems, like it goes all the way down. But when something is so publicly broken at such a critical time, then what we've done in the past and what we are doing now is we just collectively throw money at the problem. And a lot of people, and I agree, say that it's like little too late to do that. We should have been throwing money at this a long time ago so that we weren't in this position. But in many ways, public health is purchasable, right? Almost at any time. Like public health funding has substantially increased in the past 2 weeks across the world. US global health funding, for example, I have the easiest access to that kind of data, went from $11 billion in 2019 to $20.8 billion in 2021. That's almost double. So a lot of that was supplemental funding and tied to COVID in many ways, but not all of it was earmarked. Like a lot of it went, for example, to my program at PEPFAR, and PEPFAR continues to be just an HIV-TB focused program. But given the context of the pandemic has just fueled a plague of these interrelated public health problems. And so the funding to a great extent has trickled down to these areas that are not COVID specific. But of course, with more money involved, there's also more scrutiny of our programs. So people are watching to see if we're using these funds effectively, if they're having an impact, if they're getting to the right people. And to be fair, I think the scrutiny is on all levels, right? So of course the public health systems are being analyzed more than ever, but also at the policy level, the decision makers are under pressure and they're also being scrutinized under the watchful eye of the public. But to me, more scrutiny also then means opportunity to be more precise. And like precision public health, I'm doing air quotes here, was a buzzword, I think a few years back. But really, it's as simple as saying, like, are we targeting the right people at the right time for the right thing?
And to me, this pandemic has forced us to just be smarter with our programming. And we don't have to look very, very far for a successful example of precision public health. And if you look at the vaccine development timeline, right? Of course, the foundation for that took years and years to develop. But despite that, this is the fastest development of a vaccine in human history. The supply chain problems are another issue, but the urgency of the pandemic has really lit a fire under us and forced us to be innovative and smarter and faster in really exciting in ways that are undeniably exciting to me. But all of that precision then has also meant that I like feel the burden and the pressure of the work we do now more than ever before. And to me, out of that burden has risen this intense feeling of personal responsibility, which on this slide I've put on the good side, right? But I realize it can also be a negative. But what I mean by personal responsibility in this context is that I really feel the weight of my position at the metaphorical table and while I was on COVID response at the actual table for decision making. And I don't trust, and I wouldn't trust anyone more than like the people in this virtual room or the people that study this for a living, to be the ones sitting at that table, influencing those decisions, providing guidance, and then leading by example. It's even to me as simple as like, if I go without wearing a mask outside, or if I throw a party or anything of the sort, it's like a pulmonologist smoking cigarettes, right? Like I wouldn't really trust that person. So yeah, I think it's great that we're being seen as leaders. And even if you're not directly involved in the field of COVID work, right? You still are leading by example in your little communities. People are watching what you do because you're in this field. But to me, everything listed on the right side of this slide is like a provisional positive. So each of these things has the potential to evolve our public health system to become stronger and better, but it also has the potential to continue the like boom or bust cycles that we've always seen in public health. And when I'm at my lowest point or where I'm feeling really negative about how the pandemic is going, this is where my mind goes to. So is there an answer to making these provisional positives into real positives? And obviously there's no single answer, but there are actual scientific, precise, proven methodologies that you can use to create smarter public health programming. And at least that's what I'm going to try to convince you of now. So the big question to me, right, is how do we get what works, that we know has proven works to the people who need it with greater speed, with fidelity, with efficiency, high quality, and with coverage. Like I said, there's no single answer, but to me, one very important answer is organizational science. This is like a ridiculously buzzwordy and filled with comma definition of organizational science, but I will just read it at least once so that you hear it out loud. So what is organizational science? It is preparing, implementing, and monitoring organizational structures, practices, and processes to improve your organization's effectiveness, efficiency, and health. I'll read that again. Preparing, implementing, and monitoring your structures, practices, and processes to improve your organization's effectiveness, efficiency, and health. So this is like fancy word of saying it's just the application to me of like true business methodologies in the field of public health to make your program stronger and more business-like, right? And sometimes this like rubs people the wrong way because, you know, we're public health, we're not a business, we're emotionally driven, we're passionate, it's not about making money, it's about saving lives, blah, blah, blah. But I think it's actually unfair to put public health programming in this like purely fuzzy category. And I'm all about the fuzz with public health. I am extremely passionate about this world, but at the end of the day, we really are also a business, right? There are trillions of dollars involved. We have a product or an intervention that we sell or try to convince people of. We have human resources that we have to deal with and use as effectively as possible. We need to market our interventions and our products. And ultimately, we need to watch our bottom line so that we can make sure that we keep doing the business that we're doing. These are all components of any business, for profit or not. So what frustrates me is like, why can a villager in rural Ethiopia, 4 hours from Addis Ababa, have a Coca-Cola in his hand, but not a vaccine, right? So clearly we're doing something wrong. And of course, like there are so many layers to public health issues and access issues, right? Politics, diplomacy, money, will, right? But if we treat public health programs more like for-profit companies, where our currency maybe is like lives being saved, then is it really that different from the Coca-Colas of the world? I don't know. I don't think so. I have a really good example of this application of organizational science, a very, very simple application of organizational science in the practice of public health from my time in Addis Ababa. So I was based in Addis, working for CDC for a year, and we were tasked with setting up Ethiopia's Ministry of Health's first emergency operations center. And it was like this huge effort. We'd been working all year on it. And there's tons of research on EOCs and how, what makes them work and what doesn't. And we used all of that amazing research that people have done to launch the thing. And it was a successful launch and everyone was on board and it was really exciting. But soon after the launch, we kept running into these very specific personnel issues. Like everyone knew their individual roles within the AOC structure, and they generally knew how they were supposed to work together, but we kept having people issues. And I had just graduated from Hopkins, and I had taken, in my MBA route, I had taken classes on like human resource management, and I had just very casually suggested to the director, my CDC director at the time, that we try to implement something that I learned from actually my consulting world, where we have these very informal, quick performance review type sessions with our staff member on a very, very frequent basis. And to me, I thought at the time, like, okay, this is very simple, but it will help us identify like what the issues are. It'll help us be more transparent from the staff perspective, resolve those issues quickly. And it's not, it is organizational science in that it's very human resource specific, but it was a very, very simple idea. Like talk to your staff more often. That's really all it was at the core of it. But the impact was immediate. And as soon as people, one, had a place to air their concerns, two, felt safe to be honest, and then three, knew that they were being evaluated, the drama of whatever was going on really literally melted away. And I know performance reviews are, highly established systems in every business, including public health. But this like constant, quick, informal review was something that to this day, I work in PEPFAR, I've been there for 4 years. We don't have a system like that. We have a yearly performance review, and it just fails on so many levels to me. But it's something that I learned from my consulting time, where we literally had a post-meeting debrief after almost every meeting. And it sounds exhausting, but it really helped us all be on the same page at all times and not have any like unheard issues or consequences or things we were dealing with that caused larger problems later on. So that's just a very small example of pulling something from a business practice into your public health organization. And certainly you don't have to have had an MBA to come up with that. But you do need an open mind and a new perspective at the way that you approach your public health programs. And that's part of what I'm asking you to do today, right? To help you gain that perspective, I came up with a few of my favorite books that I really have enjoyed over the years. I'll just mention a few, a little bit about each of these books. How Google Works is, Google might arguably be like one of the most successful companies in the world and is known for a really great culture. And so this is written by Google executives. It's just your classic corporate book that covers its history, the strategy, the philosophy, and innovation at Google. Just a really interesting read. Built to Last is by Jim Collins, who is like the father of how to convert your crappy company into a solid company. And it's a really cool read because they compare a lot of, I think it's like a dozen or so super long lasting, highly successful companies, and then filter out all of the unique strategies that have made them so successful and talk about why they were built to last and how those strategies supported that. Hooked is a more product focused book, but it has a really interesting, it's if anyone has read like Tipping Point, it's a little bit similar to that, where they talk about ways to nudge people to use your products and to bring them back to your products again and again without having to spend a ton of money on media and like communication and things like that. First Break All the Rules is a great book that I love about flipping traditional management and leadership styles on its head. So basically, like, it talks about how the most successful managers in the world are ones that are not scared of breaking any rule. And it covers managers of all types, like from Fortune 500 companies down to like a small startup. And it's a great book. The Fifth Discipline is, I'm reading it now. I've kind of put it aside over the holidays, but Peter Senge, who is like, again, a god in organizational management, he is the founder of, I think it's called a Center for Organizational Learning or Learning Organizations or something like that at MIT. Very, very famous. And his idea is about this learning organization, which is an organization that continuously improves and stays highly competitive and makes lots of money by helping its members to learn and continuously learn. And the learning concept has 4 disciplines, but in this book, he talks about the 5th discipline, which is systems thinking. And then another Jim Collins book that I like is Good to Great. It's like a little bit shorter read. It's sort of your typical Jim Collins stuff about what makes a business successful. But I think it's a little bit more digestible than Built to Last. And then finally, the world famous business Bible in many ways, the Six Sigma Way, which is about using data to eliminate inefficiencies in your business and throwing out the garbage. And if you want the sort of more evolved version of that, then read about Lean Six Sigma. But these books are short and they are exciting to read. And my plea to you is, like, even if you can just pull one small concept out of one of them, read a chapter out of any book and see if you can apply it in your work now or in the future, and see if that makes a difference in your organization. I also just went into the Bloomberg directory and found some classes that are available for you to take at Bloomberg. And this is just a small list of the classes that I would take if I were interested in this topic area. And I know I'm running out of time here a little bit, so I won't go through them, but these are currently available to you now. Like, take a class, see if it's exciting to you. But I do want to also come to the fuzzy stuff, because like I said, I do think public health is a unique area in that we are driven by more than just money. We're driven by something very emotional and very exhausting sometimes, and very inspiring other times. And that's the fuzzy stuff. This is the blood, sweat, and tears that I'm referring to. I, as well as you, I'm sure, have literally given my blood. I donate blood every year. My sweat, I've sweated in many meetings that are high level decision making, and then my tears, and most recently given lots of tears to the response, where I've just been so frustrated and exhausted by like the inefficiencies of this response, right? But I also see that fuzzy stuff, while it can be exhausting, can also be really empowering. And I have some pictures here to share of just my life here. So this is the day that I graduated from my MPH MBA program. I felt so excited and fresh and inspired by my colleagues, just so proud of myself. This was my first day working at the UN in Kathmandu in Nepal. Like, that feeling that you get, this is the first day of my work in Addis Ababa. My parents had come to visit the embassy where the CDC office was located. And it was just this like beautiful immigrant story that I was so proud of. It. We were like all ugly crying. This was my first day at CDC. The matching outfit was completely unintentional, but I'm trying to use these pictures to sort of jog that like inside fire, that excitement, that inspiration, that passion that you had on these very firsts that you had and will have over the course of your career. And remember to use that in your public health world and in the work that you do, because I think now more than ever in this awful time that we've all gone through over the last 2 years, who knows how much longer we'll be going through it. We can't afford to have the smartest and brightest people in the field of public health become jaded. We just can't. We need to be collectively more on top of our shit than ever before. We need to be smarter. We need to be more innovative. We need to work faster. And we don't have time for the negative stuff. Like, don't let the world bring you down, basically. So if nothing else, do it for the kids. This is a picture of my daughter running through our neighborhood in Bogota. But I hope that my 2 pleas to you, to use business management strategies in field of public health, and to and to just stay inspired and stay motivated, help you in some way. And I ask that you just take one small piece of anything I've said and try to apply it in your work and see if it makes a difference. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you, Kashmir. Such beautiful words, definitely inspiring. And I think that we all could use the charge that you've given to us, and we'll take that and champion it forward. I thank everyone for joining us today. And with that, we will conclude this talk. Again, we thank you so much for your words and your time, Kashmir.
Thank you so much, Olivia and Paul, for having me. Appreciate it. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.